Welcome everyone to tonight's debate. This House believes it is better to live in 1984 than Brave New Worlds. Apologies for the room change last minute. Queen's decided to host a meeting in the room beside the Senate room. So we could even, the room is free, we just can't use it because of Queen's, which is typical Queen's to us. So before we get into tonight's debate, we have 4 speakers each side, so there'll be less time for private members' business than usual. However, we have 2 more speeches, so that's to be understandable. So before we get started, do we have any council announcements for this week? Anyone? Yes?
So I'm acting internal convener for the next 2 weeks. So I'm both internal and external, so it's convener at the same. And the next debate coming up is it's not.
No, it's this House would leave the European Convention of Human Rights.
Yeah, so if you've already said you would speak on that, please confirm, because it's going to be the Tuesday and not the Thursday, because we're going to Dublin on Thursday to speak with the bill. And there is 1 space on prop and 2 spaces on off left, so please message me, touch me tomorrow, and email me external@literific.org, or just find me and tell me you want to do it before Tuesday.
Thank you. Anyone, any further announcements? I have a few. So our elections were held last week after the debate on Thursday. So I'm glad to say that our secretary, Josie, has been appointed as our secretary. You have been here for the last 7 weeks already, but you're not officially elected, so which is good. And our outreach officer is somewhere in the room. Yeah. You're on the floor. Leading by example is Dermot Hamill for outreach this year. As Tal just said, our debate will be on Tuesday at the usual time in the Senate room at 7 o'clock on Tuesday. Our debate on Thursday is in Dublin with Phil on the motion "This House would unite Ireland." The way that's going to work is we're going to have a bus of 70 people, and members will be given priority seating. So to sign up as a member, you can speak around at the end, and also if there's any seats left, non-members can be accepted as well or pay on the bus. But yeah, so that's on Thursday. I'd say we haven't decided time for people to be at the Senate room for pickup yet. Probably around 5:30, probably. Or
Say,
5:30.
that what time's in the debate?
7:30.
Yeah, but we need time to get that.
Yeah.
We'll figure it out.
We'll figure it out and get back to you on the time. But yeah. So we'll get back to you and I'll be on our social media about what time that's at. But that'll be on Thursday. So that's the only thing for me. If there's no more council announcements, then we'll go to the minutes from Josie. So we'll give Josie a big round of applause, please.
Hello everyone. So, on the 3rd of November 2022, the Queen's University Belfast Literary and Scientific Society convened for the 7th ordinary meeting of the 174th session for the motion, "This House believes Biden's presidency is a failure." As usual, the meeting began with announcements. President Matthew Taylor nominated Tony Gallagher to be the chair of the Literific Trust. This was seconded by Kira Swale, HLM, and unanimously passed by the House. Ryan Hoey, HLM, was then elected to be the secretary of the trust. This motion was also unanimously passed. Ryan Hoey then thanked everyone for the attendance to the Halloween pub crawl, which was an extremely successful event, even though I can't remember half of it. After a reading of the minutes, the meeting moved to private members' business. Ellie Byrne, HLM, presented the letters of no confidence for our current Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak. Responses were heard by Grant Warren, HLM, Noah Barnley, Megan Hewitt, James Orchin, HLM, and Ryan Hoey, HLM. President's questions then commenced. Joey D. Morrow, HLM, presented Taylor Swift's new album release and asked the President what his favourite Swiftie song was. Matthew responded with anti-hero and was met with nods of approval. President Emeritus Daniel McCormick then asked what is the President's favourite album of all time. The President presented an indie band called Mandela, but he was then called pretentious for this answer. President's questions, the vote of prior opinion was held. There were 22 votes for aye, 23 votes for nay, and 12 abstentions, so the opposition had it. The chair of the Literific Trust, Professor Tony Gallagher, then made his first speech to the House. He stated that he was looking forward to hearing this very timely debate and seeing the judgment of the House on this motion. First on the proposition was Grant Warren, HLM. He began his speech by stating that this is not an argument on Donald Trump being an alternative to Biden as president. However, Biden's presidency has shown that he is ignoring the needs of the American people. Despite Biden inheriting a US economy recovering from the pandemic, his actions have contributed further to the economic malaise. Rather than America being back, as Biden would claim, America is broke, both morally and economically. First on the opposition was Tom Burns. Tom proposed that we should all look beyond Biden's verbal gaps, as he has won some huge legislative wins. When looking at former Democratic presidents, they have promised a lot in poetic prose, yet have delivered so little. Through Biden's Inflation Reduction Act, he has simultaneously created thousands of jobs whilst fighting the climate crisis. Tom stated that Biden has introduced progressive laws to better the people, and despite Biden not having the magnitude of Trump's character, he has a fundamental understanding of how the government can work. Second on the proposition was James Orchin, HLM. James first stated that Biden's presidency has been incompetent, useless, and embarrassing. Under his presidency, Biden has seen the largest European land war since World War II, and his comments about decolonizing Russia has thrown further fuel onto the fire. James went on to then propose that Biden's withdrawal from Afghanistan was because of a selfish desire to boost his position in the polls. Second on the opposition, giving his maiden speech, was Adam Race. Adam began his speech by stating that he voted for Biden in the last election and had been surprised by the policies he had implemented. Adam stated that Biden has put the interests of the American people before the profits from the invasion of the Middle East, showing that he is both a powerful leader and not a pushover. The final speaker for the proposition was Kira Swell, HLM. First, Kira claimed that Biden's policies only put bandages over social and economic issues, but do not fix them. Citing the withdrawal from Afghanistan, Biden's short notice of 2 months to withdraw troops left hundreds of thousands of people to the mercy of the Taliban regime. She argued that the decision to cut the foreign aid budget and the US's refusal to fix this matter has put 1.9 million children at risk of starvation. The final speaker for the opposition was Ellie Byrne, HLM. They first argued that despite Biden's presidency being unfortunate, they could not see any real alternative to take over his role. Referencing to Trump's questionable COVID statistics, Ellie asked the House, how are we to trust this claim about employment rates? Were they not also falsified? Biden has ultimately helped with social matters such as abortion, student debt, and the withdrawal from Afghanistan, making him a far more efficient president when compared to his Democratic predecessors. Questions were then heard from Jamie Warren, Gary So, and Daniel McCormick. Tony Gallagher then gave closing remarks on the debate, stating his pleasure at such a varied array of arguments on this motion. Following the debate and questions from the House, the vote on speakerability took place. There were 20 votes for the proposition, 29 votes for the opposition, and 4 abstentions, so the opposition had it. May I take the minutes as read?
Thank you, Josie. So it is now time to turn our attention to private members' business. So for any of you that are new, this is your opportunity to raise points about stuff that's going on in the news, stuff that's happening on campus. Right, Daniel, you're right there.
Sorry.
And we'll take one tonight because of time. So we'll take Kira. Could you state your name for the minutes, please?
Hello, everyone. My name is Kira Swale. So, midterm here tonight. Essentially, for those of you who don't know, the American midterms have, well, they're technically underway. away, but most of it has been counted now. And for those who don't know, the predicted kind of red wave did not occur. Most of, the Republican Party has been essentially left with egg on their faces after, typically in US history, if a president has if the economy's bad and the president has low approval ratings, typically that means a massive wave on the other side. This did not occur. So, I would like to ask the House's opinion on what they think the effect of the midterms will be.
Thoughts on the midterms? Yes. Minutes, please.
I stayed up to watch the midterms. I was particularly interested in Pennsylvania because I thought the race between John Fetterman and Dr. Oz was very interesting. And for me, Fetterman is the perfect personification of what I think a politician should look like. Because he has the aesthetic of someone storming the Capitol, but he speaks like Bernie Sanders.
Thank you. Yes, state your name for minutes, please.
Mr. President, America is back. If we go off Joe Biden's definition of democracy, which is if Democrats win, then yes, America is sort of a democracy, I suppose, based on the results. I think ultimately it just shows that America is a very polarized society, and I think the Republicans have maybe did so well last time in the House by nearly winning it that the result that they're probably going to win the House with tiny majority doesn't look great, but ultimately Biden's agenda, if he does lose, he has to come, is dead in the water. Not that it wasn't dead in the water already, but I think also just points that candidate selection is just extremely important because if you nominate an unelectable candidate, chances are it's probably going to drag down the rest of the party in the state. Pennsylvania is a big example with the Republicans, with the help of the Democrats, nominated a complete nut job. I think he went down to something like a 60-40% defeat there. So very, very slim indeed, almost Belfast margins there. And yeah, quite inconclusive. I'm very upset with Joe.
I think with it kind of shows as well, a lot of the time in the past, I think a common mistake people have made in the elections is, especially in the case like Biden's facing, where it's a very low approval rating and poor economics, that a lot of the assumption is then you have to like appeal to the center or appeal to the right more. So a lot of the candidates will oftentimes in the past be like, oh, well, we got to start acting like centrist Democrats. They didn't really do that this time, and I think we saw positive results from it, and I'm hoping they'll learn the lesson that like actually having like progressive left-wing candidates does win the elections. So.
Yes, state your name for the minutes, please.
Danny McCormick. I think pointing out about that Pennsylvania thing, where you had John Fetterman, you had Dr. Oz, you had a snake oil salesman, and a man who literally cannot decide what his opinion on fracking is for one, and can't string a sentence together in a debate, which all of you should look very, very badly on. But it just goes to show how absolutely fucked America is that that's the only people they can find to put forward for it. You know, it's almost as comical as when you had Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump as the two choices for your president. You know, it's just really, 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 really bad.
Yes, state your name for the minutes, please.
I think the tweet earlier from Biden, in which he essentially said, look, we lost the least out of the last three Democratic presidents in 40 years, is so indicative of American politics, where it's like, we're not going to win, but we're going to lose less. Yes, it's common practice for them to lose, you know, in their first midterms, but it's still really bad.
Yes.
I think looking ahead to 2024, the rest being important. If you look at the Florida governor's race, Ron DeSantis won by 20, 25, 30 points, something like that. And it's really put him in the front seat now for a Republican nomination for president. I mean, Murdoch today has turned against Trump, and the Post has turned against Trump. There seems to be this idea in America that Trumpism is dead after the midterms, and it's going to be taken over by DeSantis. He's going to bring the party into some sort of new era of crazy alt-right populism, just in a slightly better fitting suit. But I think looking ahead now to 24, I think if Biden wins, the agenda may be dead now, but I don't think that man stands a chance against Biden on something.
Yes, state your name for the minutes, please.
John Larry. Well, I'm going to sort of diverge from the past few opinions here. Try and say overall this is actually quite positive because first off, in American midterms, the sitting party always loses seats, and it has lost only a few seats, and what I've heard it might retain control of the Senate and the House. But one of the things, they gain control of like 6 state governments. Like that's not considerable. Like I've heard talk of like a new constitutional amendment in America or something like that. But I'm not entirely sure, but it is progress.
Yes, keep going for the next please.
Reinho, I think that the fact that we still don't actually know the full result shows that the way that they count the votes in America is just incredibly slow. Like it takes when we do it over here, it takes us like in a Westminster election anyway, we count them overnight and we know the result by the next day. So they really need to speed up their vote counting. But anyway, on a more sort of serious point, I think that whoever it was who made the point about candidate selection is absolutely right. Like Ron DeSantis, no matter what you think of him, is just an incredibly effective political operator, and he went from narrowly winning the Florida governorship last time to winning it by 60-40, whereas like really incompetent Trump-backed candidates who it was assumed that they just ride on a red wave and win underperformed, whereas the candidates that were actually proved themselves to the electorate did well. So I mean, if the Republican voter base were smart, they would vote for Ron DeSantis to be their candidate in 2024, but they're not, so they still might pick Trump anyway. And if they do that, then they deserve to lose.
Anyone we haven't had? Just these lads? Right. Yeah, go for you.
I think on the point again about candidate selection, Trump was actually interviewed and he said some mad shit. He was talking about how if the candidate's endorsed by him when he deserves all the credit, but if they don't get it, he doesn't deserve the blame. And I think that speaks to a greater point of the fact that I think Americans are kind of sick of this Trumpian like politics, and they should rightfully turn on him and endorse someone who is, albeit not much worse or not much better in DeSantis, but I think that's where the tide's turning.
Come on, anyone that's not spoken before? Anyone? No? Right. Yes, again.
I like the add on when it comes to what comes. I think Trump said, I think it was on his Truth Social account, he posted saying that thanks to him, they won a massive great victory in Alabama. A noted swing state in Alabama.
Yes, last. Sorry, James.
This is cancel culture. I think ultimately on the point of Ron DeSantis, this is probably the best election result he could have asked for, because Republicans in nearly every other state did either meh or pretty badly. Meanwhile, I think they have landslide majorities in the state house. They gained seats in the US House as well. Effectively, the Florida Democratic Party is that I think he won with every conceivable demographic, including single white college-educated women, which is probably the most democratic demographic in America. And it probably also helped the fact that his opponent has ran in the course of his career as a conservative Republican, a liberal Republican, an independent, a conservative Democrat, and now he's a progressive Democrat. So yeah, it's quite surprising that the people of Florida voted against that. And then one final out on the actual candidate point, the Republicans came within a hair of winning the governor's mansion in New York, which is, I thought they would do better than they ordinarily would, but the fact that they came that close, it seems quite likely that this Republican candidate, Andy Zeldin, gave up his House seat to run the governor. I think he's managed to drag along 4 or 5 Republican gains in New York, and that might actually give them the House. So I think if there's an MVP of Republicans, I think it's him and DeSantis are probably up there.
Thank you. Last point, yes.
Look back. Won't be mad this time over.
You said that, right? Should we unite under one leader? Is that what you're going to say?
I think that the fact that the Democrats didn't lose as horrifically as they should have shows how effective they are at peddling ideology. Not that the Republicans don't do it, but the Democrats definitely do it to a higher degree. And I think that this is more a reflection of the people of America than just the political system, because we do get the politicians we deserve, regardless of your country.
Thank you. So now it's my displeasure to turn my attention to... It's like that was, I was expecting something way more out there than that. Quiet, please. Quiet, please. So it's now my displeasure to turn my attention to the President's questions. So this is your opportunity to ask me a question for 5 minutes. Anyone want to go for it? No way. No way. Yes. State your name for the minutes, please.
Jack Hammond. Matthew, it has been a few weeks and I've noticed that it hasn't been asked and it's going to piss a lot of people off. What did you have for breakfast?
Shame. I had Weetabix for breakfast this morning. Good. In case anyone cares. Yes.
Are you lying?
No.
You say that you're going to say Weetabix every week so people stop.
I've had Weetabix for breakfast. Are you accusing me of lying? Wow. Bring back bands. Yes.
Mr. President, myself and Ellie Burns were recording on that point radio show last week in London, and we raised an important point on that, but we haven't asked, how do you take your Weetabix?
How do I take my Weetabix? How do you take your Weetabix? There's one very clear way. Is this going to be... It's going to be that put the Weetabix and the milk in first? Is that what you're going to ask?
I'm just, what, do you take it with anything?
No. I take it warm if that's what you're asking.
Psycho.
Yes.
Did you listen to the new Joji album?
I did. I listened to like one track, I can't remember what it was. It was decent, so I'll give you a review next week if you want. Yes.
In the news this week, there was a town in England that was being terrorised by
I'm not going to take this
birds. And there was a picture of it, and the thing looked really evil. Mr. President, I have two questions. A, in that situation, what would you do? And B, if you could be any animal to terrorise small children, what would you be?
Well, if I was going to be any animal to terrorise small children, I'd be Dermot Hamill. There was a story of, I was in Dublin and I seen this bird, this one with an ice cream cone, and about 40 seagulls went and attacked this woman, and she like fell head first on her ice cream, and then they proceeded to continue eating the ice cream while it was on her face. So
And you did what?
I laughed. As anyone should in that situation. Yes.
I was just wondering what your thoughts are on Elon Musk now owning Twitter, but more importantly, do you hope he reinstates the Donald?
Yes. Yes. I am not answering that question. Yes.
Just to follow from that, will you personally or the society be investing $6.99 a month into Twitter blue check mark?
Absolutely. You know, it's really at the forefront of what we should be investing in. Our money should definitely be going there. You know, your fees from Thursday is going to go straight into Twitter Blue, so that's where it's going. Yes. Is that all of them? Good. Oh. You've already had one before. Yes. Last one.
If the president has seen the England World Cup squad, what is he going to do?
I think it's an absolute shambles that Maguire's in that squad. It is disgraceful, and that is not a political thing, so I can state it.
We've got questions from our SU overlords.
That's right.
And that concludes President's question. Yes.
So, a couple of questions. If you say I can't have a couple of questions, I'm cutting you budget by half.
I don't have a question.
I don't have that power, but I'm going to go with it. First of all, I've been made aware that there is a certain Facebook group in which smart face has been used in certain data. Now, first of all, I am flattered that this honourable gentleman has been taking this amount of time to crop out my face in excruciating detail, and I appreciate the marble work asked on the one. However, at what point will I be also invited into this, I don't know what it's called, like Bundle Cup from Wish, in order so I and my Meme-in-Chief can respond with counter memes to combat the membership. Second of all,
whoa. that's a question for him, not me.
I've invited you.
You've been invited to. So for those of you who don't know, there's a meme forum that is for the Nerf. You have. I've invited you to it, so you've been invited to it. So there's your first question. Like, just ask one.
The question is a very short thing. But the second question is: will yourself and numerous other people here be marching alongside us at the concert?
No, we're not taking political line. No. Quiet, please. Right. Thank you. That concludes President's questions for the evening. So, we now turn our attention to the vote on prior opinion. So, this is your personal view on the motion. So, if you think that 1984 is preferable to Brave New World to live in, you can raise your hand now.
Why do you all want to die? You've all chosen
This
death.
House would rather live in 1984 than Brave New World.
Let's make shot.
Why do you want to die?
Why do you want All I want is no one leaving the vote.
If you think you'd rather live in Brave New World than Brave New World over 1984, raise your hand now. $17, yeah. If you wish to abstain on the motion, you can raise your hand. Oh wow. Oh.
Who hasn't read the book?
Also, we're not finding clip notes.
22. 22, yeah.
Mr. President, can I ask a question here? What's this issue with people who actually read the book?
If you've read the book as speakers, put your hand up. Oh, there we go. Take that, James. So, quiet please. Do we have the numbers? Please, give me a break, James. Come on. Do we have the numbers?
So there were 21 votes aye, 70 votes nay, and 22 abstentions. So currently the proposition has it.
So it is my pleasure to welcome the first speaker for the proposition, Jack Hanlon.
Well, boys, I'm in a good mood tonight, so I'm not going to do the shouty stuff I usually do in my other speeches. So, right, the concept of living in 1984, as we understand it, and the novel's usage in the modern cultural zeitgeist is admittedly enough to make anyone here wince, myself included. Upon first glance, we see the absolute paragon of a dystopian society, overt thought control, a violent oppressive government, totalitarianism at its true peak being combated by a budding ragtag resistance movement. One can see the novel's influence in other forms of media. Star Wars would probably be my favourite on that one. And also, many people draw real-life comparisons to the novel. For example, how conservatives often do when literally anybody tries to tell them that spamming slurs on social media is a bad thing and not protected by freedom of speech. Don't be fooled, though. There's one key comparison that we can draw between the societies presented to us in 1984 and in that of Huxley's Brave New World. Now, it may get a few groans from a few members here, especially from those who have dealt with my psychotic ramblings and laveries about modern contemporary societal structures and my repeated uses of the term monkey and goblin mode, but I truly believe that we, right this very second, live in a brave new world. In a chaotic TV interview that I hold very close to my heart, Slavoj Žižek presented one of my favourite modern characteristics of government authority in the Western world, wherein he compared the government's usage of authority to that of a father trying to convince their child to visit their granny. Should I do an impression of Žižek or leave it? Yeah. Yes. Okay, right. In essence, he stated that the authoritarian father will tell the child, "You must visit grandma." We've all been there. I used to get dragged out to my granny's constantly with no internet. My fat little gamer ass would absolutely bawl my eyes out every time. Happened last week. He then presents us with the tolerant as opposed to authoritarian postmodern father who says, I'm going to do it again, you know how much your grandmother loves you, but nonetheless, you should only visit her if you want to. You and I both know this means, however, you have to visit Granny and you better fucking like it. Tolerant control that operates in a willing contractual basis, like we see in A Brave New World, can conceal a much stronger order of authoritarian governance. Is it not better to see and feel the hatred of your oppressor? To know the true face of the enemy? In 1984, much of Winston's conflict in the novel is with himself and his complicated feelings towards Goldstein's writing and the Brotherhood. Within the world of 1984, as with any overly totalitarian government, there is a bona fide resistance.
On that point.
No, I'm okay. A true guerrilla force that strikes fear into the heart of the regime, insofar that they must read the individual minds of every citizen in order to suppress any opposition. We see here a weak state, a pathetic state, ripe for destruction. Granted, Wilson himself falters, nope, as many people would in his situation. Look to Orwell's own writing in his novel Homage to Catalonia, wherein he writes of his experiences fighting for the POUM militia in the Spanish Civil War. He acknowledges that members of the bourgeois, when threatened, retreat and disguise themselves as proletarians. This is a mere sociological fact in any society wherein there is a revolution. This, however, does not discount the power of actualized revolution, the power of ideas, of spirit, of hope. These things in my mind, yes, go on.
Literally, the revolution you speak of is a ploy by Big Brother to bring in dissenters. There's no person in that book who doesn't get caught by the fault police and convinced to turn against their own minds and be made a puppet of the state.
Yeah, I'm getting there. I'm getting there. No, it's a really good point. I'm getting there.
On that point.
No. Right. These things, in my mind, can only be experienced through pain. In A Brave New World, we see a far more dangerous form of oppressor, comrades. One not unlike our own. A horrid, faceless chimera composed of the guiding, creeping hand of the government and the force of mental subjugation, which controls every single iota of our day-to-day lives and existence. It does not force itself into what we do, as you said the Big Brother does. No, we let it in. It comforts us. The central aspect of control in Brave New World is not through restriction, but through pleasure. Pleasure is pervasively controlled. It is commodified, corporate. Look no further than in the contrasting depictions of sex in both novels. The orgies are the orgies are the very thing that drive John to suicide in Brave New World. They embody everything wrong with our modern conceptions of bottled pleasure, pleasure in an app, a package deal, a transaction. The sex in Brave New World is dog shit at best.
On that point.
No, the best pleasure. Or sorry, hold on, I'm a bit lost. The pleasure is sucked away from the world. Or look, the pleasure is sucked away. The pleasure is sucked away from mood-regulating narcotics that push you into a complicit state of willing acceptance. I'll be grand, you say to yourself in a very Irish way, as your freedom, your soul, is stolen piece by piece from right underneath your nose to be sold right back to you in dick pills, cold beer, and some stupid little fucking plastic sucky thing that makes your heart vibrate and smell colours if you take too much. Sex, and by extension, the pleasures of the world of 1984, are real. They are stolen back. The ecstatic breath of reality on the back of your neck as you rejoice in every step you take in a path you've been forbidden from treading. Only through the pain, the control, the theft of joy will you ever know what is missing, what is to be seized back. Oh my god, I have so much to get through. On a philosophical level, I would much rather be condescended to, be combated with by horrific oppressive ideologies that sicken me to my core, if it meant that I could defend liberty and freedom to my very last breath on this earth. The joy of discourse, that's why we're all here. When we go back to the bar and debate and beef with each other over stuff that would give the average business student like a brain hemorrhage. Brave New World has no capacity for this in the world state. Everyone views themselves in no need of discussion, no need of thought. Leave it to the savage reservations of the outside world. I see in this a phenomenal criticism by Huxley of the anthropologically problematic and often racist characteristics of futuristic utopian societies such as those presented by H.G. Wells and Isaac Asimov, the latter of whom I own Berman hold an intense respect for. It's the only fiction writer I read. You can ask me about that later on, I know. In that these perfect societies rely entirely on hegemony, on collectivist thought, rather than embracing the very differences that make us the jigsaw puzzle of humanity. We need negativity, we need discourse, otherwise we stop evolving. Any society that operates on a principle of central government by means of a supposed hegemony ideology or set of moral values that finds itself incapable of criticism, even within intellectual freedom, or rather, as we see it in Brave New World, a facsimile of it finds itself in intense danger of implosion. I've got to skip some stuff. Hold on, give me a minute, please. Please. I've written so much. I love this. Right. Much as we see in the anti-Marxist democratic models of the Western world, my view here is, of course, based on the view purported by philosopher Russ Schaefer Landau. The epistemic facts have demands that they demand belief onto them. If we accept what is given to us by societies, exactly that, epistemic facts, universal truths, if we subscribe to these values simply because they maintain our own status quo, our comfort, we are sacrificing our very will as individuals. I conclude with this: if you live in a society where the crack is so shite you need to move to the lighthouse and hang yourself like my boy John, I'm pretty sure it's hard to argue that the orgies were worth it.
I am not Cormac.
No, you are. Yeah, back
Okay, here we go. Good evening, President, Proposition, Opposition, the audience, and literary black pill weirdos. Yes, after all this time, I am finally going to speak, because as a drama student, playing pretend, faking confidence, and literature is all I've really got going for me, so hang on with me here. Today I will be telling you why the happy drug and sex fest in A Brave New World is surprisingly better than the torturous fear and propaganda-driven society 1984. Whoa, who would have thunk it? Let me start by saying that both worlds are... They are absolutely fucked. Like, yeah, do that, okay. Like, you don't want either of them. And I'm not arguing that I would actually want either to happen. I'm simply arguing that if it came down to it, I would rather take my chances with Brave New World. Now, the big difference between the two worlds is how the government chooses to control society. In 1984, the government controls the population through fear, while Brave New World keeps everybody happy so they won't want to leave. To quote James Orchin, HLM, Brave New World is the future the Liberals want. I can already see a plus side to Brave New World. Right, let's get the most pop. Is that a point of order? Or? Continue?
Go back and forth, yeah.
So let's get the most popular point out of the way. In Brave New World, you get to shag a lot. That's already a big plus, and for a lot of you, you can finally have your first time, including me. We'll talk about that in Lavery's weekend. So that's where we'll go. Right. Yes, the population in Brave New World are perpetually horny. To quote Nicki Minaj, he won an F-R-E-A-K. Public orgies are so much the norm that having a relationship is taboo. To compare this to 1984, you have zero choice in who you end up with. No love, no sex, except to have children. And since Big Brother... No. And since Big Brother is watching you 24/7, they're definitely watching you do that too. They pair people up and send you on your way. So, point number one to Brave New World for the availability of everybody's favourite pastime, shagging. I realise that a big point in this debate will be, is ignorance bliss, or would you rather be stupid and happy than aware and depressed? My vote, personally, would be that if it came down to it, I'm taking the easy option. And I'm not ashamed of that because I'm a realist. She says while talking about hypothetical totalitarian superstates. I'm tired of the argument, at least I can have emotions.
No, you can't. You will have to suppress any emotions that Big Brother does not like for fear of either being brutally tortured or never seen again. The fact that you have to hide your humanity and morality like that is so incredibly painful. It is torturous. Nah, and you won't get away with it. They are watching you, even if you don't think they are. They are. You thought Alexa was a good listener? Try cameras and microphones in every room, inside and outside. Yes, in Brave New World, you are in a drug-induced state of happiness, but I believe that that is far easier, and you will want the easier option. If you don't want the easier option, you're lying. It's easy to say, oh, I would rather suffer, when you have the foresight and perspective that we do. But let me tell you, if it happened, you would choose the easy option. Ignorance in this case is bliss. Nah. And if you think that you could somehow start an uprising and take down Big Brother, or that you would get away with it, or that the 1984 regime would somehow be easier to overthrow than Brave New World because you're not drugged up, you're wrong again. Nah. Get over your hero complex. You're not some special little snowflake endowed with the power to take down a totalitarian regime. There is no escape except death. You are in it for the long haul. Even if your plan was to start an uprising, it isn't going to work. The entire premise of Newspeak is that they are creating a whole new language for this regime that will overtake standard English. You know what they won't keep in that language? Vocabulary that contradicts their ideals. Soon enough, you won't even have the vocabulary to discuss what you're feeling, and that's if you find another human who believes the same as you, that hasn't been killed, tortured, or is actually a spy for the party that's going to turn you in faster than the British Prime Minister can resign. Do you all really want to be so painfully isolated all your life with no other option? I'm surprised I didn't get on that point there. Speaking of options, you know what you have in Brave New World? You've got options. If you for some reason decide that you want to stop taking the happy drug soma and that you don't want to live in the big fancy utopia where everyone is happy, you know what you can do? You can leave. You can literally go, I'm about to head out, I'm pissed off to an island like Iceland or New Zealand where you can start a new life with like-minded people. Sure.
In Brave New World, the point that John goes to the lighthouse to escape it and follows him there is the exact criticism of that. You can't truly...
Should have locked the door. Right, let's see here, where was I? Yeah, so, where you can start a life with like-minded people. It's literally the epitome if you don't like it, move. Because you can go without consequence. It won't cost you anything, no drawbacks, you can just go. Oh, you don't want to take drugs? Go outside of the wall. You want to have a child? Go outside of the wall. You want to be religious? Go outside of the wall. Any other reason? You know what I'm gonna say. Go outside the damn wall. You can't get a choice in 1984 because the whole world is exactly the same. There's no escape. Have fun. This is in the exceptional circumstance that you will even want anything different. From birth in Brave New World, you are conditioned not to want anything else in life. You literally do not know what you are missing. And if you do, go outside of the wall. You can even go on many holiday destinations, including outside of the wall or the Falklands. Brave New World. So let's recap. 1984 is a hellhole. End of story. You are screwed no matter what. Have fun. Welcome to the train straight to denial. Keep your hands inside the vehicle at all times and goodbye. Brave New World. Sex. Drugs. Happiness. This just sounds like the Holy Land. Blissful ignorance. You will never feel the need to have anything other than what you already have. You don't want that? Great. Go outside of the wall! So, if the world falls apart, I would rather be in Brave New World than 1984. Vote opposition. Thank you very much.
Well, I would like to just start off first with a small passage from Brave New World, as I know we won't have many people here who have actually read the book. Even my own sister has not read the book and she's on the proposition. You all remember, said the controller, with a strong, deep voice, you all remember, I suppose, that beautiful and inspired saying of our Ford's, history is bunk. History, he repeated slowly, is bunk. He waved his hand, and it was as though, with an invisible feather whisk, he had brushed away a little dust. And that dust was Harappa, was Ur of the Chaldees, some spider webs, and there they were, Thebes and Babylon and Knossos and Mycenae, whisked. And where was Odysseus? Where was Job? Where were Jupiter and Gautama and Jesus? Whisk and those specks of antique dirt called Athens and Rome, Jerusalem and the Middle Kingdom, all were gone. Whisk, the place where Italy had been, was empty. The cathedrals, whisk. King Lear, the thoughts of Pascal, whisk. Passion, whisk. Sorry, no. Requiem, whisk. Okay, it goes on for quite a while, not only about a few words longer, but you know, that's why you're taught no history was how the passage finishes. And really, that's what we're talking about tonight. We're talking about the evolution of history and of the regimes. And you know, we dwell in a present tense culture that dismisses the past and the evolution of history, that somehow and importantly decided to employ the phrase your history as an insult, and thus elected to speak forgotten volumes about itself if it were to use the standard. The totalitarian dystopia of George Orwell's 1984 already belongs as a book and a date with Ur and Mycenae and the Middle Kingdom and all of that kind of thing from the passage. While the hedonistic nihilism of Huxley still beckons towards a painless, self-indulgent and stress-free haven of sorts, Orwell's depiction, obviously a house of horrors, depicting the worst of the authoritarianism of Nazi Germany and the excesses of the repression in Stalin's USSR, he often seemed to beg credulity, because he depicted a regime that would go to any lengths to possess and to own history, to rewrite and construct it, and to employ the use of an iron fist and a velvet glove to crush any dissent or any speak that went otherwise, and the big brother and that sort of thing. In discussing this, we have to ask ourselves, and we have to evaluate, which is, not only would we prefer to live in, but which is more likely to be a reality. Whereas Huxley, writing of a California-style utopia of 1932, rightly foresaw that any such regime could break but could not bend. In 1988, you know, we talk about sort of a hypothetical. Well, it was sometimes a reality as well. In 1988, 4 years after 1984, the Soviet Union had scrapped its official history curriculum and announced that a new history was in the works. This could be said to be the precise moment in which the Soviet Union conceded its own extinction for true blissed out and vacant servitude, which is presented in Brave New World. You don't need, you don't need to have any serious history taught at all, because everything means nothing and everything is available to everyone. In terms of popular culture, Brave New World isn't quite as well known, and we all tend to focus on the dark Orwellian vision. It's less well known, but it's equally as chilling. Brave New World. There's a belief amongst literary critics that Huxley and Orwell did not prophesise the same thing. Orwell warns that whilst we will become overcome by an externally imposed oppression, Huxley said no, that you don't need a big brother, to deprive people of their autonomy, maturity and history, as he thought. People will come to love their oppression, to adore the technologies that undo their capacities to think and to be. What Orwell feared was that those people who would look to ban books. What Huxley feared would be that there would be no reason to ban a book because no one would want to read one anyway. In some ways it does remind me of another favourite of mine and Jack's, Fahrenheit 451. No thank you. And this, what Huxley was presenting was that we're so, pushed into a sort of passivity and pointless egoism. Orwell obviously fearing that this truth would be concealed. Huxley feared that the truth would be drowned in a sea of irrelevance.
On that point?
No thank you. Orwell feared that we would become a captive culture. Huxley feared that we would become a trivial culture, preoccupied with some of the hedonism that the opposition have described tonight. Huxley himself, he came back and he revisited, he continued writing for a good bit, said that 1984, the people are controlled by inflicting a sort of pain, that's obvious. In Brave New World, they are controlled by inflicting pleasure. In short, Orwell feared that what we hate will ruin us. Huxley feared that what we love will ruin us.
On that point,
Sure, yeah.
I don't see your point. Literally, you're controlled in both situations. So surely, God, with no hope of changing either systems, you'd rather be happy than live in fear, misery, poverty, depression your entire life.
But we have to take into account which is more likely to actually, because if you're blinded by your oppression in 1984, you can't even see the oppression in Brave New World. You have to ask yourself, would you rather be ignorant or actually accept the sort of reality, I guess? Somewhat, we also have to ask which is more likely to become a reality and how would that manifest itself? When we hear about the hedonism, the overload of information in Brave New World, I have to say we live in a society which has in many ways replicated what Huxley sort of presented. In some aspects, I believe Orwell has ignored the evolution of history, and if we evaluate which book has a more accurate presentation, Huxley takes the prize. And this brings us to sort of what you were saying about ignorance and all that kind of thing. No ruling class rules nakedly. Cicero talked about in the Roman Senate a group called the Epochae. And for the comrades here who do not benefit from a classical education, it simply means the few, who controlled all. They could not have ruled if they did not have slaves and workers. Similarly, there would not have been lords and ladies if not for serfs, and inevitably there would not have been Elon Musks without our modern workforce, who are in many ways blinded to their own oppression, instead preoccupied with hedonism. Some of them maybe orgies. I'm not really sure how popular they are with some of the people here tonight. Maybe not with James Orchard. And they're preoccupied with this sort of a false consciousness of mainstream media and the distractions from the way in which our society works. and as well as the opposition would like to forget that oppression changes the way it presents itself. There is a lot of myth-making involved in how power is concentrated, and no ruling class rules nakedly. Huxley shows us a masterclass in how a ruling class can justify itself, justify its being, justify the power, and justifies how those who do not benefit it, aka those who were leaving the settlement of the Brave New World. Thank you.
My pleasure, welcome the second speaker of the competition, George.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, opposition and proposition. I'm going to start off with talking about just a basic overview. The author, Christopher Hitchens, examined both books and the messages they held. He describes Orwell's book as a house of horrors, saying Orwell strained credulity because he posited a regime that would go with any lengths to possess history, to rewrite it and construct it, and inculcate it by any means of coercion. But for Huxley, Hitchens describes his work as rightly foreseeing that such regimes present in Orwell's book would most likely break because it would not bend, as also mentioned by Cormac earlier. My aim at this speech is to illustrate how life within Brave New World's world state would be a better existence than Orwell's Oceania and other continents, with my primary focus being on something that's very important to me and a lot of people in this room, would be the role of women. I wanted to take it from a point that affects me most because I thought that would be the easiest way to understand it and really delve into it. I want to focus on how women led their lives within these societies, how much agency they had in comparison to their male counterparts. I want to start off with a brief overview with how women presented in 1984. The book has several anti-feminist elements throughout. Protagonist Winston downgrades women, showing his female characters almost as never equal to the male character. The women in its novel are negatively shown by only having the ability to form relationships based merely on sex, which is, I'll come up with Brave New World in a moment as well. The belief in this novel is that women should give and never receive anything for themselves in return. They're also presented as lacking brains and the personality that the male characters possess. They also seem to have so little interest in the affairs of Oceania, and if they did, they had little agency or freedom to do anything about it, whether their situation. Obviously, at the time Brave New World and 1984 were written, women didn't have many of the liberties we have today, although there's still a long way to equality in my opinion. The first commercially accessible birth control pill was available in 1960, the 1967 Abortion Act came out as well. The views on women in early modern 20th century were most definitely influenced how Orwell and Huxley went about writing the women in their stories. I actually, instead of writing how, I wrote ho, so I don't know. I don't know how it was maybe subconsciously. It would be impossible for the authors to predict how women's rights and views of women would evolve through the 20th century. However, Huxley did somewhat predict a development that would come along later, that being contraception. Women in the book have access to contraception almost all of the time in the form of the Malthusian belt. This goes hand in hand with another key aspect of the nature of the relationships in Brave New World, which is the nature of sex, which has been brought up already. Sex is not simply a means of reproduction, but rather the opposite. The reproductive element has been almost completely removed, and it's seen as a more transactional or just something for pleasure. This comes on the basis that the world state is built on the teaching of Freud. So yes, I'm going to get into that, so get ready. In the 1920s, Sigmund Freud established what he called the pleasure principle, the idea that human action is based on the sexual drive and the principle of humans pursuing pleasure and avoiding pain. He elaborated this pleasure principle later, suggesting that humanity is also governed by a death drive. And this so-called death drive is Freud's belief that inside all of us lies a force that is violent, aggressive and destructive, even something being directed towards oneself. Through these principles, he suggests that we want to die and destroy as much as we want to live and love. Thus, this is his theory on the dual nature of man, making life and death two sides of one coin inside of us. His influence seen in both 1984 and Brave New World through considerable emphasis on sexuality, the desire to escape pain, and the destructive force of man. Although these influences ideas are displayed in opposite spectrums in vastly different ways. As I said earlier, in Brave New World, sexual intercourse is separate from reproduction. So how does this benefit women? This is a positive aspect, I believe, as some of the stress surrounding sex reproduction is somewhat removed, but maintaining interpersonal relationships can be simplified. Sorry for the roundabout way to get into that. I wanted to go on about forward a wee bit. But the next point can be further exemplified by the presentation of monogamy in Huxley's book, which I found rather interesting. In Brave New World, the idea of monogamy is practically eliminated from society, while today monogamy is more or less conditioned into us from a young age. Many people grew up today hearing all about how exciting weddings and marriages and how important it is for our societal structure, how important family is, and how our self-worth can be measured by either whether or not we have a family. You just look at how childless women are still viewed in many parts of our own society, with the word spinster often carrying such a negative connotation, and many childless women being called selfish for choosing not to reproduce. These notions are also often tied to religion, where a woman's role has historically been tied to the home and having children. In Huxley's world, however, religion is practically non-existent, helping to remove powerful prejudice and stigma that we have been burdened with for centuries. I'm not saying that all religion stigmatizes women, I'm just saying from my own personal experience.
Point of information.
Yes? Go ahead.
Oh.
Here we go. I knew this was going to happen.
It seems to be you're failing to recognise that there is a natural law and natural meanings out there for people, and isn't that autonomy is the be-all, end-all, greatest virtue there ever will be? What Huxley does in Brave New World is not grant autonomy. He robs meaning.
Okay.
Robs of people's ability to even pursue it, to even want it, which is worse than a form of oppression.
Well, I actually was going to mention later on, but I'll mention it now. Huxley actually alludes to the idea that the conditioning that people go through from a young age, it's not all powerful. There is a point in the book where people are, it's not just Donna Savage, there's another character who is able to kind of think for herself and overcome that as well. So yes, I do agree that the idea of autonomy is quite complicated in Huxley's world, and there is a lot of nuances to it, and the fact that it's very difficult, I understand it's difficult to get out of it, but in my opinion, for women, I think it's easier to live in Huxley's world, but I hope that's okay. Thank you. But yes, so moving on from this, I definitely felt pressure as a young woman to believe that marriage and children was the only choices. I'm also not saying marriage and children are inherently a bad thing, but in Huxley's world, these restrictions are removed. Fear of marriage practically doesn't really exist. There's a lot of stigma and hate around sexually promiscuous women today, where this is removed in Brave New World. People throughout Huxley's world are able to choose sexual partners and enjoy themselves and move on if they wish, with no stigma attached. Adding to this, the birthing process in Brave New World is very different from what we do in our own world. It has become slightly more depersonalised, with incubators and so on, which are stored in jars on conveyor belts, which is quite a scary image, but I do agree. But on the surface, this method does seem very cold, but as far as dystopian stories go, I don't think it's that bad. As described before, people in Brave New World live in a state of blissful ignorance instilled in them since birth. In a way, I think these methods invoke the modern world method of surrogacy from people all over the gender spectrum who can have a child who may be unable to carry a child themselves. Machines and widespread help are widely used today for reproductive purposes. Look at IVF and incubators. And technological advancements today have greatly reduced infant mortality rates. Pregnancy at birth can be a terrifying thing. As Joseph Hall writes, death borders upon our birth and our cradle stands in the grave. So I can only imagine how low maternal and infant mortality would be in Brave New World. Many at the time of this book might have been shocked at how children were brought into Huxley's world, but with today's perspective there's definitely more similarities. As a woman living in Huxley's world state, all of the fear and difficulties surrounding bearing children has been removed, which I can only see as a positive thing. I think the main question we need to ask ourselves here is whether we prefer to live in constant fear of those ruling over us, always under the eye of Big Brother, or would you prefer to live in a sort of ignorant bliss, free from pain and fear? The truth is, neither of these books provide a particularly pleasant view of the world around them, and when researching this speech, I initially found it hard to decide. The story, there are scary prospects in each book, but I find Huxley's interpretation much more comforting, not just the ease of mental suffering, but the bodily autonomy that many have in his story.
Right, I'm going to preface this by saying I'm a physics student, so people scare me, and talking in front of people terrifies me. So if I faint, just don't worry, I'll be all right. But yeah, here we go. So Winston Smith and Bernard Marx are deeply troubled characters in their respective settings. They're both unable to fit into the engineered worlds that they are made to serve. Smith, in 1984, is repulsed by the absolute obedience that his party demands. He has reservations about the implementation of Newspeak, a language created to limit and cajole human thought, and is unable to perform doublethink, the act of holding contradictory beliefs simultaneously. Up until his capture, every private act that Winston is seen to perform is one of defiance against the party. He chooses to keep a personal record of events as he sees them, and he also chooses to record his own thoughts and opinions. He engages in acts of love with a like-minded Julia, and also tries to uncover the true history of Oceania rather than subscribe to the fictional history that the party's given him. After his arrest then, Winston is subjected to escalating levels of torture, and is left broken and defeated, unable to think independently, and is wholly reliant on Big Brother to form any grasp of reality at all. Bernard Marx, on the other hand, feels unwell in his brave new world of free love, drugs, and pop music. He is a somewhat respected alpha plus. He's an intelligent member of the upper class in the world state, but he's agitated by the norms that are set upon him. Bernard is an engineered and conditioned human, premeditated desires, wants, and needs, coded into him so that he exists and lives optimally within his economic framework. He is troubled by this in ways that he cannot comprehend. He holds grudges towards his colleagues who interact promiscuously with one another. He feels he is not well suited for his role as a psychologist.
On that point.
No. He yearns for something different than what he's been given, but he's unable to articulate himself in any way. These problems are only deepened whenever John, an outsider to this society who's labelled a savage, is completely at odds with this world. He finds that his old-fashioned ideals of love, loyalty, and humility are unacceptable in the Brave New World, and is driven to the point of suicide with feelings of shame and guilt when he is unable to reconcile his traditional worldview. Both novels, at their core, detail the human struggle for freedom in a totalitarian system. Here, people are reduced to cogs in a grand machine that doesn't really care for the individual. Both Orwell and Huxley envisioned the rise of totalitarianism, although they did so through directly opposite means, essentially. Orwell's world described a power-hungry political party taking control by force, whereas Huxley's world is one of passive control, where a combination of genetic engineering, psychological conditioning, and soothing popular culture make people subservient to the will of world controllers. Although Huxley's rose-tinted pop world seemed like the better deal, it is likely doomed by the fact that it would probably be successful. Orwell's political party, INGSOC, maintains power by brutalizing its subjects, controlling them through fear and surveillance. It reorients every facet of society to serve its own purpose. It rewrites its own history, curbs the diction of its own people, and even reconstructs the nuclear family, turning children against their parents and making them into spies of the state, similar to Hitler Youth. All party members, no matter how zealous or opinionated, are scrutinised and oppressed by their party. One is left to wonder if such a system could hold itself together for very long. Surely a world where every person is watched, every word recorded, and every inconvenient truth memory hold is fated to fall apart.
On that point.
Surely such a state of fear, paranoia, and doubt would eventually implode. If every person who strays too far from party doctrine, like Winston, is tortured to the point of becoming emotionally catatonic, surely people would eventually find the means to either rise up or simply lose the will to live. It shouldn't come as a surprise then that most real-world dictatorships and totalitarian states that are branded as Orwellian eventually collapse under their own insolvency. Brave New World alternatively captures its citizens in a state of consumerist culture and has artificially modified all desires to pursue alternative lifestyles out of the public consciousness. Its people are only as free to live the way they wish as a bird is free to roam its cage. The open and unlimited access people give to one another means that they become unable to form any true or meaningful connections with their fellow humans, and their ignorance of negative human experiences such as pain and heartbreak robs them of any opportunity to grow as individuals. John the Savage, perhaps the last true human, is disgusted by the Brave New World and finds the only way out of it through death. The last true Orwellian state could arguably have been the Soviet Union, which fell in 1991, giving rise to what George H.W. Bush dubbed a New World Order. This apparent Brave New World involved America capturing the earth with its consumerist culture and has since then had a firm grasp on how all first world citizens perceive reality. The fall of the USSR also saw the end of the last great ideological war, that between communism and capitalism. Since then, we've become stuck in an inescapable consumerist landscape that we have no hope of getting out of anytime soon. Mark Fisher aptly put it, it's easier to imagine the end of the world than the end of capitalism. Like Bernard Marx, we are stuck in a world that we do not like, but we are unable to illustrate a better one. Whereas in Orwell's world, like Winston, we at least have the ability to dream of a better one. That is it. I'm sorry.
It's not my pleasure to welcome the third speaker from the opposition, Terence Macklin.
Here. Good evening, Mr. President, members of the committee, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters. I alone amongst tonight's speakers actually did experience living in 1984. The factual year, that is. Not the fictional horror show that I will be portraying George Orwell's 1984 to be. L.P. Hartley correctly stated that the past is a foreign country. They do things differently there. And my recollections of 1984 was what it didn't have. It was internetless, it was penniless, and it was virtually sexless. The weather was often cloudy with a chance of nuclear Armageddon. But on the other hand, we did have a rather excellent soundtrack, so we could relax, Frankie says, and we don't need that fashion groove thing. Oh, Margaret Thatcher signed off on grants that would have covered all your fees, and many of you would now be enjoying generous maintenance payments. But what we definitely did not have in the real 1980s was a thought police snooping around for real or imagined thought crime. There were no telescreens spying on you whilst feeding you joyless propaganda, and the prospect of being vaporized, disappearing in the middle of the night with all evidence of your existence eradicated. No. Those abominations were confined to Orwell's 1984. Aldous Huxley's Brave New World also withheld some treats from us back in the 80s, and some are worth noting. For instance, there was no hunger, no disease, and no poverty in Brave New World. In addition, private helicopters and freedom of the skies appear to be de rigueur. Supersonic trips to exotic destinations are given. And to help out with any difficulty, a dose of Soma, which incorporated the combined benefits of wine, cocaine, and morphine, but none of the nasty after effects or associated addictions. I'll take it.
In the book, those things are preserved for the people that live within the new state. People in the Savage reservations, or so they're called, did not have access.
Are you going to be losing sleep about them? We're talking about people living inside the state. As my colleague said, outside the wall. You got it? All right. Now, Which of these worlds, I ask you, would you naturally gravitate towards? The question before you tonight is to select which fictitious world you would rather dwell. That of Orwell's 1984 or Huxley's Brave New World, some 500 years hence. The choice, I maintain, is a simple one, for it's a choice of pleasure over pain, plenty over penury, and indulgence over incarceration and death. So, it's a simple choice. Your choice. Let me set up my stall. Quick look at both authors. Orwell, born in 1903, was the son of an imperial administrator, got a scholarship to Eton during the First World War, but no cushy country pile or political career awaited him. So he took a job in the imperial police in Burma, and he started out as he was to continue, a witness to the sharp and business end of the oppressed and the impoverished. From the deepest coal mines in northern England to being down and out in Paris and London, to the front line, the Spanish Civil War, where he took a bullet for the Republican cause, to the BBC disseminating wartime propaganda. He'd certainly seen his fair share of the tempestuous, destructive ways of almost every 20th century ism: imperialism, capitalism, socialism, fascism, communism, and the terrible monoliths of the competing totalitarian blocs of Stalin's Russia and Hitler's Nazi Reich. Is it any wonder then that 1984 is so grim? A stark warning from a man who knew the abominable levels to which a state could descend, and who himself was dying of consumption. Okay.
Sorry, if you were so opposed to it, then why did he give it this MI5 of all communists, homosexuals, and Jews as all of the above?
He was a patriotic Englishman. The chief villain in 1984 says, if you want to have a picture of the future, imagine a boot stomping on a human face forever. How you like that with your cornflakes? Or your Weetabix? Aldous Huxley, on the other hand, comes from a more distinguished background. His grandfather, Thomas, was Charles Darwin's bulldog, and literary traditions ran strong in his roots. But he too was an Etonian, but not all smooth sailing. In the decade of his formative years, he lost his mother to cancer, his brother to suicide, and he lost most of the vision to an eye infection. So like Orwell, he knew the depths of a coal mine, but he didn't feel the need to live on the jagged edge, preferring the life of a successful published author, first in Italy, and then the south of France, and finally in California. More a philosopher than a hedonist, but he was open to experimenting with a few mind-altering drugs like mescaline, which chemists later synthesized into LSD. And apparently the story... Thanks. Glad we got some fans there. Apparently the story goes that while he lay on his deathbed, he requested a dose of LSD so he may slip this mortal coil on his own terms, rather like the character John in the book. Better that way, perhaps, than JFK or our own C.S. Lewis, who were dealing with their own mortality on that very day in 1962. Coincidence? Anyway, so Huxley's Brave New World, which has such wonders in it, is built around pleasure, not pain. Only a reader spurred by a deranged sense of masochism would be inclined by the sadistic tendencies could find themselves reveling in 1984, whereas for the vast majority of the citizenry of London in the year 632 after Ford are blissfully unaware of humanity's tainted history. And I ask you, what's not like there? Let's look at a typical day for an alpha-beta citizen in this insulated world of wonderful technology and shared morals. Visualize it. You awaken from your comfortable slumber beside a pneumatic lover who has exceeded all your expectation. Then you bathe in a scented water, availing of the cologne trap, while watching them slip into their zippy cami nicks that fell off so wonderfully last night at the slightest tug of a toggle. Then it's off to work after a hearty breakfast of Cynthia bacon and a vibro massage. You enjoy your commute in your own private helicopter, looking at the masses down below. You like your work as you've been conditioned for that particular job ever since conception at the hatchery. Everyone is a round peg in a round hole in this brave new world. Everyone knows who they are, what they were put on this planet to do. There's no existential angst, no crisis of identity, no worrying if you'll ever find a soulmate because everyone belongs to everyone else. And it's rude not to share. After work, a trip to the Feelies, perhaps, accompanied by someone new who caught your eye. There, the sensations of cavorting on a bearskin rug are conveyed in 5 sensoscope delight. And to finish off the evening, why not take in Calvin Stokes and his 16 saxophonists at Westminster Abbey before adjourning to your apartment on Coupel, where you're ever so happy that you've installed a new machine that delivers hot contraceptives at the gentle. I think you know which way to vote. Thank you for your time and attention.
Maiden speech. For the final speaker on the proposition, Ashley Sarr.
Hello, members of the House. First off, I would like to preface the debate by saying, why are so many people down on 1984? That was a great year in our history. In that year alone, you could partake in the UK miners' strike, as Terence knows. You could see Band Aid live in stadium and still make it back to your local cinema to see Amadeus. But seriously, this is actually about books. And although it might be rare at the Literary and Scientific Society to have a literary debate, we're one. And as the proud English student I am, just like for my tutorials, I have read absolutely nothing. I just realised I said proud English student, that's not what I am. Okay. 1984 is a grim and totalitarian world that is supposed to represent what a communist state of equals would actually be like living in, according to Orwell and his narrator, of course. This isn't very pretty. However, I have to ask, is Orwell the most reliable narrator in showing a society of equals without making it seem far worse than it is? Although Orwell is often classified as a socialist, his actions would prove that he was really more of a moderate conservative. In Orwell's essays on Englishness, The Lion and the Unicorn, he discusses the kind of life he led, where he would watch old maids ride their bikes to church on Sundays. He's the great-grandson of the Earl of Westmoreland, and he went to Eton. And of course, Etonians are well known for presenting the truth.
Clarification.
Yes.
They both went to Eton.
No, there's a wee fact I didn't know. Yeah, well, it was also a grandson of an earl. That's one up there. As much as I am sure that George Orwell wanted fair play and to help the poor, he still wanted to be rich. That's why he misrepresents the idea of social levelling that we see present in 1984. Orwell and his narrator will only show the bad side, adding in the authoritarianism to almost slander any idea of a level society being good. Meaning maybe 1984 isn't as bad to live in as it seems, but instead it is an attempt of Orwell's for his narrator to warrant us away from wanting equality. Next, I would like to talk about the individuality and humanity of 1984. Part of the plot is that people are being stripped of what makes them human and turned into mindless worker drones. I think, anyway. That's what CliffsNotes said. However, consistently throughout the plot, we see that this isn't true, and there is some humanity. We see it within Winston running a diary to rebel against Big Brother. We see it within his relationship with Julia, and with Julia as well, where she is in the anti-sex league, yet participates in sexual activity. She makes banners for Hate Week, yet believes those functions are without value. Everyone in Winston's immediate world may believe and go along with the rules, but a lot of the time they disagree or rebel against them. This shows humanity and potential for individual thought within 1984, sure.
Literally, in 1984, all hope is ripped from you. That's the point of it. Literally, all the people you mentioned get turned into mindless drones and were killed. Then in 1984, everyone who dissents gets shipped to the Falklands, where people think the same as them. Oh, the horror!
Did you read Brave New World? Yeah. But at least they're given the opportunity to fight. And also, if that is the case, then I'm not going to spoil the ending, but it didn't really end out well for the protagonist of Brave New World. In fact, I would say it ended out much worse for him. Yeah, this isn't shown, the humanity isn't shown in Brave New World. There is no way for anyone to have any individuality. It's quite literally, people are grown to be identical and put into an inescapable social destiny from birth. They are made in test tubes where 8 to 96 clones can be made, and then they are put into alpha, beta, sigma, little TikTok kind of roles. Even
On that point.
no, wait, actually, yes.
I'm allowed to be a Sigma male.
I'm just going to ignore him. Even if this first chapter has cheeriness to it, and the whole book kind of hides behind cheeriness, this is because the recreational drugs and everything else masks a dark reality that strangles any humanity coming from this world. You can still be a human in 1984. You can't be in Brave New World.
Not point.
No. Lastly, the endings to these two books in a lot of ways are similar. Both of our protagonists die at the end. The difference is that in 1984, Winston fights for his life and individuality, defeating the torture of Room 101. Do they shoot him at the end? Yes. But no. But he never conformed to the world he hated. In Brave New World, on the other hand, after stooping as low as the rest of the civilization, he takes his own life. Brave New World is his and everyone in it, Room 101. As without redeemable qualities, it is what drives you to that breaking point.
On that point.
Thank you very much, Brian.
Right.
On that point.
Productive time. I'm going to start off this speech by saying, do you know the fact that the world drove John to suicide? It didn't! I've been wanting to say that for the entire time. What actually drives John to suicide is the unconditioned stuff that happens outside the reservation that the state has nothing to do with. That conditions him to hate sex. He then gets confronted with a sexy girl that wants to sleep with him. He then gets driven to guilt and commits suicide. Nothing to do with the state. So now we've done that, let's continue on. So, we all want to be heroes. We all want to be the person who saves the day, gets the girl, and takes down the guy who's basically an allegory for Hitler. But here comes a time in our lives when we realise we aren't the heroes. We realise that what we want to do is quite different from what we will do. What we think we want to do is quite different from what we actually want to do. We all want to be John, a person who stands up for what he believes in despite all the pain and suffering that he faces. That we'd rather die than live in a world that we can't accept. But in reality, we're Bernard. A person who talks the talk but can't walk the walk and goes for the easier life as soon as it is available to him and fecks off to the Falklands. So today I'm going to talk about what really matters in this debate. Happiness. I'm going to do this by first addressing quality of life, the emotions, and what happens to you if you don't fit in. In terms of quality of life, we have 1984, a world where the world is constantly at war, constantly under surveillance, at the threat of either getting vaporized, imprisoned, tortured, or killed by a bomb, with the main character kicking your head into a gutter, and even those in the party are limited by what is available, so the upper echelons. With Julia becoming a little rebel by the simple act of putting makeup on and having sex in a park, where places like Victory Mansions are little more than little dingy dark apartments that smell of old cabbage. And that's for the upper echelons. Yet in our world, well yes, your prospects are limited. You're well fed, clothed, and given most of what you want in life. You live in a world where there's no disease, no hunger, no aging, no war, no grief. You're made to fit whatever role you're in and enjoy your place in life. And if you're part of the higher echelon society, you get to enjoy dinner dates, holidays, a little trip on the plane, and plenty of sex to boot.
On that point.
Yes.
You just said it yourself there, it's if you're part of the upper echelon of society. I brought the point up earlier, the savage reservations. Why are these people not entitled to these things in your society?
Because here's the thing, you act as if the people in the reservation live a terrible life. They don't. They're in that society and they age and they give birth and everything like that, but there's no evidence of widespread kind of hunger that we see in your world. They don't have access to the technology, fair enough.
But the majority of people in our society have access to that. In your case, they do not. So, and what would we feel in these two worlds? In 1984, you'd feel constant paranoia from doing something so simple as to write a diary. A world where sexuality is scorned and every desire you have is to be suppressed. A world where even if you are sure of your own mind, you will be locked into a place and tortured so badly that you will believe 2 + 2 = 5, and you will betray even your own thoughts to survive. No. In our world, you're conditioned to like your place in life, and even when you don't, Soma is there to cure every negative emotion you have. It is a drug with no side effects, by the way, and also, when John, the valiant hero, takes away the Soma from the workers, they want it back. Maybe because people would rather experience happiness than to suffer when they don't have to change a world that they can't change. No. Because I know exactly what you're going to say and I can't be bothered. Which brings me on to my last point. There is no chance of change or escape in 1984. It's highly implied throughout the novel that the 3 main continents in the novel are in cahoots with each other and keep a never-ending cycle of war going to maintain power. No. So guess what that means? No escape. No escape from the paranoia, the lies, the restriction, the anguish, and it's made clear that you can't change it. But the main character, who's supposed to reference Winston Churchill, by the way, he started getting investigated before he even committed a crime, where he is basically tortured to the point where he is made a puppet of the state. Whereas in our world, guess what happens if you don't fit in? If you don't want to take your Soma, or if you want to write poetry, you get shipped off to the Falkland Islands with like-minded people, and John, by the way, or given the freedom to choose. He chose this, to live in a lighthouse and whip himself. No, I know he's kinky. And then, where the government let cameras come in and photograph him doing this, by the way. So the government let media in to see him whip himself.
On that point?
No. And he commits suicide because the conditioning that happened outside the state happened and made him not like sex. So when he was confronted with sex, he basically got so guilty and so despaired with himself that he killed himself. And that is an anomaly in the book, by the way. Most of the people in this society live life of relative, happiness.
On that point?
No. Because I know what you're going to say, and the basic gist is, if you compare both worlds, fair enough, in our society, like, you have some people, like, that filter through the cracks, but you have everything you want in life. In their world, you have poverty, and you have starvation, death, aging, and all that fun stuff. Because ultimately, we all make the mistake that Julie and Winston make in 1984, where we think we can conquer the world as they can make us change our actions, but not our thoughts. But whether we like to believe it or not, we won't change the world by our thoughts or actions. So what's left for us? Misery, poverty, paranoia, hunger, restriction, war, oppression, with no Soma, sex, or the Falkland Islands to escape to. Which is why living in our world is better. Because with no chance of changing the world, we might as well live in the world where we can be happier. Because whether you want to believe it or not, ignorance is bliss. And that is my night. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to our fantastic speakers this evening. So we now turn our attention to questions from the floor. So we have questions for the proposition. You can raise your hand now. Yes?
I think the point about I like to point out towards China and the social credit system. And I like to say that Orwell probably have values and for a very, very violent oil movement, if you saw the social credit system in China, how that system is developing, the Chinese system of social credit is sort of a fusion of breathing well with pleasure and your oppressive totalitarian nation. Orwell was freaked out so badly when he saw what was happening. For Orwell, the extent of his sort of technology for oppression was the telebox. For us today, it's Alexa, it's helicopters in the sky, constantly 24/7 monitoring every move, it's cameras, it's the whole shebang. And I think the argument that it's in the past, it's a fallacy, it's in the present, and technology only makes it so much stronger when we can literally put mind chips in our head which control our every thoughts, as per a la Elon Musk, who plans to put mind chips.
Leave Elon alone.
Proposition first.
Right. But also would be worth noting that the excesses of like all of those things are also there in China as well. The social credit system, you know, it's not that dissimilar from the similar oppression in other countries like Korea or the industry is not so nice here too.
Opposition to response.
Yeah, this is something that I'm surprised didn't come up, you know. It's almost as if that someone in Popyang in 1950 came across a translation of 1984. And he ran up, he was bright spark, he ran up, Mr. Kim, what do you think of this? To which Mr. Kim replied, he's like, that's about fucking diesel. Not many people know that Mr. Kim was from Don't Give Him That. Took up his place in North Korea. I mean, 1984 isn't just fiction, it is fact. How many people here want to live in North Korea?
Questions for the opposition? Yes.
A lot of what the opposition said is in terms of how that in comparison to the world, there's ready availability of sort of free sex and sexuality is kind of inhibited. But I just think that there's a point that they've not mentioned here, I think tonight, is the fact that in the world, children are encouraged to have sex and encouraged to engage in erotic sexual acts. And any child who does not want to engage in it is ostracized. Can I just ask, how does this all fit into your argument?
If I could get started on that, just, I don't know if you're familiar with the works of Sigmund Freud. In fact, there's a number of characters in Brave New World who carry the last name Freud. And it seems to me that humanity is born with an innate sexuality. Now, this is maybe encouraged beyond the levels that we would consider normal in that society, but it certainly seems happy enough there that pre-adolescents are given lessons to prepare them for the adult life that they're going to move in.
Proposition response.
I think that that's a fantastic point, but also right with it. And yes, it is in my opinion, a very clear case that the commodification of the way that we construe ideological values and the way that these are given to us are given at every single level. It is inescapable. The metaphor for sex within the novel acts as any form of pleasure. We are teaching children from a young age that pleasure is the be-all and end-all, and he represents it in a very graphic way in the novel in order to represent us that we need to teach children the consequences and the betterments that will come in terms of experiencing pain and suffering so that we can grow as people.
Do we have a abstention question? Let me. Yes. Say your name from that, please.
So I haven't read either book, so I'm trying to get a bit of fame for the debate. So is it in 1984 everyone's really bored, kind of depressed and stuck in everything that seems really grey, and in Brave New World everyone has loads of drug-addled sex? Is that essentially the comparison?
Like, if you want, I can give a quick summary.
We'll go proposition first. Yes.
So I feel that, well, I mean, for me personally, 1984 is exactly that. It's supposed to embody a metaphorical representation of a truly totalitarian and authoritarian state. Aldous Huxley's Brave New World instead is more of a criticism in terms of how the proposed utopias of, say, H.G., as I mentioned in my speech, H.G. Wells, would turn out and become dystopias. That's why he wrote a separate essay after Brave New World called Brave New World Revisited, in that he amended certain things within the society in Brave New World that he believed would actually help to make a utopia. My opinion on that book, I don't think is relevant. I don't really entirely agree that you can criticize anthropological utopias by making your own anthropological utopia. I don't think it makes any sense logically. But that was what he was trying to do. At least I feel so.
Opposition.
Right, so I'm going to give a quick summary of both books for people who actually haven't read it. So essentially, 1984, you have this guy called Winston. He creates a diary which he knows will lead certain effort. He then eventually he finds this girl called Julia, who he figures out is actually kind of rebellious against the party, but not. She basically has sex with various members of the party, and they form a relationship. Then what happens to them is they meet a guy who introduces them to an antique shop, and they can hide away and have sex and do all that kind of stuff. Then what happens is the friend who they confide in actually turns out to be a member of the thought police, and then gives them over to get tortured, where they're both essentially forced to go back to betray each other and betray their love for each other, and to both think in doublethink, where they both become kind of puppets of the state. Then 1984. You have, I can't even sum it up. In 1984, you have this guy, Brave New World, Jesus. And then what happens is they bring them through the lab and show them how basically all babies are created in test tubes. They're kind of sorted into different classes. They are conditioned to like these sorts of classes, and they are conditioned to kind of enjoy themselves or whatever. Some are limited than others, etc. Now, you have this other character who's a woman who has sex with everybody, and then she eventually goes with this guy Bernard to kind of the reservation, which is supposed to be like, I hate to say this, but savage land, where like people give birth, people age, etc., etc. Then Bernard basically brings back John the Savage and his ma. Now, his ma eventually dies, and this causes John to get furious at the world and go on a rampage. And eventually he gets caught by the big leader, and two of the guys are sent to the Falklands, and he is basically told, here, you need to stay here. So he decides to go to a lighthouse and basically whip himself for thinking sexual thoughts about somebody. Then the girl comes to him in heartbreak because she misses him, and then he's just like, oh no, get away from it, and whips her. And then this causes a really weird thing that happens in the book, where essentially a riot turns into an orgy. And then
that's all day, you know.
No, genuinely, a riot turns into an orgy. They all have sex, and then in guilt and horror, John the Savage then kills himself, and that's how the book ends. Now that is a summary of both books.
Do I have time for one more?
I was very
a really good
point there.
Sorry, it's not temporal.
I just swore we don't have time. We don't have time. I'm sorry. We've got time in the pub though. So now it is time to do the vote on speaker ability. This is not a vote on how you personally think on the motion. This is a vote on which team you think has spoken the best. So if you think the proposition has spoken the best, you can raise your hand now. If you think the opposition have spoken best, you can raise your hand now. How many did you get? Huh? 38? 30, go. Yeah, it's 38. And if you're abstaining on the motion, you can raise your hand now. You've already voted, have you not?
Yeah, but I got 1984, don't forget.
You can't vote again.
Well, I'm changing my vote to an abstention, or otherwise I'm getting kicked tomorrow.
That's not my problem.
Not maybe your problem.
Any abstention votes? One. Well, two. And we'll take 37 for the up. So do you... You're right. Do you have the final numbers for tonight's debate?
So there were 21 votes for the proposition, 37 votes for the opposition, and 2 abstentions for the opposition.
Can I also just say, there are 3 maiden speakers on this side. It is absolutely incredible to see 3 maiden speakers win a debate in such a margin. It's absolutely incredible. So another round of applause for that as well. So, don't get up yet. There's people blocking the way out anyway, so that's no problem for me. So, this debate on Tuesday is this House would leave the European Convention on Human Rights. Very topical issue. It's at 7 o'clock as usual. Spaces are open for both sides. So if you want to speak on that motion, you can speak to me or Talsha in the pub afterwards. It's on Tuesday, not a Thursday. And if you're going to the don't get up yet. If you're going to the debate on Thursday, in Dublin, you'll have to pay membership primarily to get in. So if you want to pay now, if you're going for that, you can speak to Ryan now. Otherwise, you can go to us to the pub, Libraries as usual. Thank you.